What is up, guys? Archon Tsunami here, bringing you guys a video. This one on the changes to DK and where I think they are going to be, and then talk about Unholy specifically. Anyway, without further ado, let's hop into it. Blood is getting nerfed. They're losing 15% armor, which might be a big deal on big pulls. It's going to add up real fast. You also have Will the Necropolis getting hit. It's now 30 over 30, so you have to drop below 30% to get the 30% reduction now. And here, let me show you guys some things. Let me swap to blood real fast and then make it so you guys can see what I'm talking about. I'll show you why this is a big deal. This is a big deal because dropping below 30% to activate a 30% damage reduction might not be worth it. Especially like on a boss fight that hits really hard, like maybe Fetid or something. I don't even know if you could even use Will of the Necropolis and Fetid, but it's just an example of physical damage that the armor doesn't reduce anymore, and I'm just trying to give you guys a quick example. I can't think of any more off the top of my head. Anyway, you're 30 over 30, whereas if you just take Rune Tap, which is 30% damage reduction for 4 seconds at the cost of a rune, which will hurt your Death Strike proc, or your Death Strikes, because you won't build as much runic power if you're burning them into Rune Tap. But you will be able to stay up above like 50% HP and basically keep yourself alive for big hits. I think Rune Tap will be the go-to rune. I think the 50% armor reduction is going to hurt a lot, and it's going to make it to the point where Will of the Necropolis is just going to be negligible now with it being needed to be underneath 30% HP. It's just not going to get used as much. You're going to want to use Rune Tap to reduce damage at a higher HP value to keep yourself alive. That's where I see the meta heading for blood DKs. These changes to blood are also going to hurt people that don't know how to use blood or Death Strike. And what I mean by that is people who spam Death Strike at max when they're already maxed HP, instead of waiting to take a little bit of damage to, rubber band their HP pool up a little bit and get the max value out of it. These changes are just going to hurt you, and there's not much you're going to be able to do about it outside of like learning the class. I think you're also going to have to learn how to use Rune Tap. Again, I've already made a pretty good example for that. Yeah, those are changes to blood and where I think blood's going to be. Let's go ahead and look at the changes to Frost and Unholy. Frost and Unholy are getting a sustain buff, which is nice, because we definitely need it. I didn't realize how big this could be until last night when I was fighting Vectus, and I was able to survive double Vector by funneling a bunch of runic power into Death Strike, and using it every single time I took a tick from the Vectors. I was able to survive double Vectors 3 times, and I won't say I kept myself up by myself, obviously I had healers healing me, but I think a majority of the healing was my Death Strike, because it was basically the moment I took a tick, I would immediately hit Death Strike and I would jump right back up. So unless those healers were actually keeping tabs on when the tick was coming, I think Death Strike was keeping me up pretty well. And this is going to be a big deal in sustain, because basically it's costing 10 less, which actually hurts Unholy. I'll get to that in a second. It kind of hurts Frost a little bit, but not as much as Unholy, I think. But we'll get into that here after we talk about kind of why I think these changes are big, or to the reduction of the cost. The reduction is basically going from 45 to 35. And right now, as it stands, you basically do 2 Death Strikes and you're at 90 runic power, and that's 90 gone. And then you have to have an extra 35 sitting around in order to do a 3rd Death Strike to heal yourself. These changes make it to where now you can Death Strike twice, and then you'll have 30 left over if you're at 100, and then you only need 5 more runic power to do a 3rd Death Strike, and that's pretty big. That adds up over time. You'll be able to get yourself up over 3 Death Strikes, and the increased healing is nice too, obviously. The reason I think it might hurt Unholy and Frost a little bit is because both of their runic regeneration is based on runic power spent, and Death Strike was, I think, a 62% chance of causing runic corruption to happen for Unholy, which was our rune regeneration. It is now down to 49%. So if you cast Death Strike on a free proc or whatever, you may not get the runic regeneration back that you used to get, which could potentially hurt your damage a little bit. I've had fights where runic corruption doesn't proc at all, and it's miserable. I've actually sat for 7 seconds auto-attacking because my runes wouldn't come up. It's pretty miserable, and Holy needs to have some other type of RNG implemented, or they need to increase runic corruption a little bit more, to where it's maybe like a 60% chance, so we're not fighting RNG as hard. Frost is kind of the same thing, But I think Frost is 1% per every runic power spend. You just automatically get a rune back. Um, it kind of hurts them a little bit too because it's a 45% going down to a 35% or something close to that. We'll see though. We'll see if there's any offsetting buffs that come to runic regeneration. Let's talk about Azerite power or Azerite traits now. We're Unholy's getting Magus of the Dead. So during our Apocalypse and Army, we're getting an additional minion who hurls Frostbolts and Shadowbolts at the foe, dealing 900 damage will round down. The big problem is that Frostbolts don't scale with Mastery, I don't think, unless they're going to have it to where the ghouls or the minions scale themselves before they come out. So as you're summoning them, they then scale at that point, the damage. And that would mean that like your Frostbolts would already deal max damage because they're based off of your passive or your Mastery. And the Shadow Bolts would obviously already be dealing max damage as well because their Mastery damage has already been calculated beforehand. That would be the only way to make this work. Otherwise, if you get a bunch of Frostbolt procs, it's going to be really awkward. Especially if it's random what spell it casts. It's going to be pretty awkward on the damage charts to gauge like where it deals, because if you're dealing Shadow Bolts and then it scales, it could be doing a lot more damage. So 30 seconds, that's about 15 spells each. Apocalypse is 15 seconds, so that's about 7 spells each. 7.5. So we'll see. We'll see how this works out. This could actually be a talent or a trait you have to go find and you have to spec into. Because there's not too many for Unholy that you have to spec into. Festermite's one that could be borderline required. Let's talk about Cold Heart. This is a new talent coming. I think every spec can get this. It might be mandatory on Blood as well. We'll see. But basically what it does is it pretty much makes Icebound Fortitude a 2 minute and 30 second cooldown. It also heals you for about 2k basically per the 8 seconds that Icebound's active, so you're getting 16k healing just for popping Icebound, which is nice. It'll help with keeping you up, obviously, if you're in Blood. If you have to take it in Frost or Unholy, it's another thing that'll help you get through mechanics a little bit better. It'll help mitigate damage, so you could prop it during like a fight like Vectis or something that you have to take a lot of damage. If you absolutely have to survive. But yeah, those are the changes coming through. I talked about Blood. I didn't really go in depth on Frost because Frost isn't getting a whole lot of different changes that I've seen. There are 2 more traits that I've heard are coming. One for Frost. I think Frost might be getting a second one as well. But there was one more for Unholy called Hell Chains, but I'm not going to talk about that because it's not here and it might be coming before 8.1. If it doesn't and we get an updated list of 8.1 changes and things change over time before it comes out, I'll do another video on it. But until then, we'll just let that one rest. I want to talk about some of the things that they can do extra to help Unholy out. So let's go ahead and spec swaps here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed me covering the 8.1 changes. Let's talk about some things they can do for the future though to help Unholy out. I think the biggest thing would be is to give us a bit more runic regeneration chance off of runic corruption here, because right now it's a 1.4 for every rune we spend, or every runic power we spend, and right now we spend 40 and we spend 30 for the most part. It's going to be somewhere between 40 and 30. I think 40 is about 52% or 56% chance of getting a rune back, and that also includes on sudden doom procs as well. So, and that doesn't really proc all that often, to be honest. You can get a talent that procs at 15% more, but without knowing what the base proc is, I don't know if it'd even be worth running. I'd have to actually go digging. But yeah, so you're looking at about a 56% at most chance of getting a runic corruption to regen your runes, and that's just not good enough. It's a 50-50 chance that maybe you'll get runes back, and if it doesn't proc, and I've had it like I said happen before where I've fired off like 4 or 5 death coils and not hit 56% chance, and just it feels horrible. You're stuck sitting for 5-6 seconds, unable to do anything but auto things and hope to sudden doom procs in order to get another chance at hitting 56% chance to get your runes back. Unholy Frenzy, if you use the cooldown when you're low on runes, it kind of helps a little bit because it gives you a haste buff, but it's negligible because it's a minute 30 cooldown. You're not always going to have it up to regen runes for you. We just need something a little extra to help us. Maybe buff it up to 1.5 or 1.6. But that way it's at least a 60 to 65% chance, you know? Something a little bit more than a 50-50 would be nice. The other 2 changes I would propose would be, one, removing our runic spenders off the GCD, since all they are is filler anyway. They're not actually meant to deal a lot of damage outside of maybe Epidemic on big mobs. You could make an argument that that is basically what our damage is on AoE if you do spec into it. But ideally, I think you could remove them. It would be fine. It would allow a little bit more easier of a flow, especially for Runic Corruption when it does proc. It would just be easier flow for our kit in general. Then we could like Scourge Strike inside Death and Decay and do a bit more AoE while also spamming Epidemic, and it would just, like I said, be easier for us to get our damage out there in an AoE setting. The other change I would propose would be to basically either buff, there's two ways of doing this. You would either buff Army of the Damned, in that you would add Dark Transformation to this list of things that are affected by Death Coil and Epidemic, or you just straight up make it to where Epidemic affects the cooldown of Dark Transformation by 1 second like Death Coil. It feels horrible in an AoE fight to not be spamming your AoE damage and instead try to get your Ghoul up who also deals AoE. That's the main reason you use Dark Transformation, and most times, outside of it just being up and it being there, you want to use it on AoE fights because your Ghoul deals a bunch of AoE damage. So I don't think it would hurt Unholy to have the ability to have Epidemic and Death Coil also reduce the cooldown by 1 instead of just Death Coil. It makes more sense. But yeah. With that, guys, I'm going to go ahead and head out of here. Let me know what you think of my proposed changes. Let me know what you guys think of my analysis of 8.1 for DKs. Every bit of feedback helps. Like I said, because it helps me know what content you guys want to see. Because if I make content for people who don't want to watch this, then there's no point in making it. You know, I might as well make something you guys are interested in and actually want to watch. So it helps me out a lot, especially as a growing channel. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and plug some things, I guess. Plug the Twitch channel real fast. At twitch.tv/archine__Toonami. I am live most days. Some weeks I'm live all week. And that's usually mid-afternoon Eastern time, like 2 or 3 p.m. Eastern time. And we usually stream a decent amount of time. Trying to like 5 or 6, maybe sometimes 8. We'll see. Raid nights, which are Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're usually going from 7:30 Eastern to about 9-10 o'clock. Maybe I might knock out some world quests for an extra hour and chill with chat. But yeah, I'll link the Twitch down in the description below. I think that does it. I think that does it for this video, guys. I don't think there's anything else that needs to be plugged or needs to be said. I think that's everything. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and out of here. Like I said, comment down below what you guys think of the analysis of 8.1 and where you guys think DKs are going to stand. And like I said, let me know about the content. And with that, I will see you guys in the next video. Later.